From NPR, Mississippi immigration raids lead to arrests of hundreds of workers, 680 to be exact. 7 different food processing plants were targeted. Nearly 100 illegal immigrants were arrested per plant, and this may be the largest ICE raid in nearly a decade. Now, in the culture war sense, the conversation is around the targeting of immigrants, Trump's bigotry, and the timing of the raid, saying it was insensitive and wrong to do this just after what happened in El Paso. Never mind the fact that the AP has reported these raids were planned months in advance, and Trump has been tweeting about ICE raids for a long time. We know Trump has been targeting people for deportation and working on border security. But many people are questioning why Trump would do it now. And another story from Politico suggests the Trump administration is focused on immigration as a whole and not just illegal immigration. Except it's kind of what we've been hearing for a long time. Even though Trump can say illegal immigrant over and over again, many people on the left remove the word illegal and blend illegal immigrants with immigrants, and it makes the whole issue very, very confusing. But let's set aside the complete nonsense that is the political bickering and look at the actual problem that we're facing now following these raids. Many of these illegal immigrants had children in the U.S. They came out of school and their parents were nowhere to be seen. Whatever your opinion is, this is a problem. Some of these kids, I believe most of them are American citizens because they were born here. So what do? There are now sympathetic stories of these kids crying, begging for their parents to be returned, but their parents are being detained and will likely be deported. I don't know what the solution is. It seems like when you ask the left, they only ever say some kind of open border or amnesty policy. But many people in America, most of them, either disagree or for the most part, they disagree. They don't think we should have open border policies. Not literally, I don't mean to say like specifically 100% open borders, but things related to that. Most Americans disagree with the idea of decriminalizing border crossings. Most Americans support the idea of deportation. So what is the solution? I don't know. Certainly, this is a problem presented for these children, of which you will hear the right say it's the parents' fault for creating the circumstance, and the left will say ICE and Trump are evil. So let's actually read through what's happening, and we'll start with a story from NPR to go through the facts of the raids. Before we get started, go to irl.minds.com, irl.minds.com, because we're putting on an event at the end of August. August 31st, it is coming up. We are doing one last big push. It is a speaking event. I will be there. There will be many other people there. We've got progressives, we've got conservatives, we've got people in the middle. And we're going to have a conversation about a bunch of different issues related to authoritarianism, violence, censorship, etc. And you can get your tickets now. I believe the VIP tickets are sold out, but go to irl.minds.com. Get your tickets. I hope to see you there. It's in the Philadelphia area, but let's get back to the news. NPR reports federal immigration officials raided several food processing plants in Mississippi on Wednesday and arrested approximately 680 people believed to be working in the U.S. without authorization. The coordinated raids were conducted by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement's Homeland Security investigations at 7 agricultural processing plants across Mississippi, according to an ICE statement. In addition to the arrests, agents seized company business records. More than 600 ICE agents were involved in the raids surrounding the perimeters of the targeted plants to prevent workers, mainly illegal immigrants, they didn't include that, I will clarify, from escaping. The actions were centered on plants near Jackson owned by 5 companies, according to the Associated Press. One of the plants is owned by Koch Foods, Inc., which bills itself as one of the largest poultry processors in the U.S. with more than 13,000 employees. Forbes ranks it as the 135th largest privately held company in the country, with an estimated $3.2 billion in annual revenue, according to Fortune. I want to stop here and clarify. A lot of people don't seem to understand this, or they make the assumption Koch Foods is not in any way associated with the Koch brothers. That's my understanding. I looked it up. Many people have pointed this out, but because of the name, a lot of people are jumping the gun and saying this is a Koch brothers plant. My understanding, it's not. At least that's what I've found. Let's read on. Another plant raided Wednesday in Canton, Mississippi, and is owned by Pico Foods, Inc., based in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It is the 8th largest poultry producer in the U.S., according to the company's website. No representatives for either company responded to an email request or telephone call for comment. The arrested workers were bused to a local Mississippi National Guard hangar, where they were interviewed about their immigration status, including whether they already had deportation orders. Today's raids are part of the ongoing war against immigrant families and the communities in which they live, Julia Solorzano, an attorney with the Southern Poverty Law Center, said in an emailed statement. It is especially sickening that days after immigrants were targeted in El Paso, workers at plants across Mississippi witnessed armed agents descending on their workplace. It's also worth noting that immigration agencies that have repeatedly blamed overcapacity detention facilities for the horrific treatment of those imprisoned nevertheless detained more than 600 people today. The size of the raid operation harks back to 2008, when under George W. Bush's administration, more than 400 unauthorized workers were arrested in a meatpacking facility in Iowa. I think there's one important thing that needs to be highlighted before we move on to the next story, and it's that business records were seized. What a lot of people aren't bringing up in these stories, and perhaps because we've got a human component here, is that these businesses presumably knew they were hiring people who are not legally authorized to be working in the U.S. I wonder what the Trump administration will do in response to this. Certainly, there's got to be some kind of fine or legal action against these companies for consistently hiring illegal immigrants. And I also want to stress, too, as much as it's kind of an aside, if these businesses, and it's an important point, weren't hiring over nearly 100 people per factory, there would be Americans working at these jobs. Whatever your opinion on immigration, that's an important point. Andrew Yang says that immigrants are being scapegoated for the problem of automation. At least in this instance, these are human beings working these jobs. It's not being automated. But let's move on, because I think the human component is the more pressing issue. And whatever your opinion is on illegal immigration, this needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed in a sympathetic and empathetic manner. These kids aren't the ones at fault for whatever is going on, but they are now facing the brunt of what has happened. Blame whoever you want. What can we do for these kids is the real question. This is a story from CBS 22 WHLT. Children of undocumented immigrants arrested in Mississippi rely on strangers for food and shelter. They report, following a massive undocumented immigration enforcement operation resulting in more than 650 arrests, many children of those taken into custody were left temporarily homeless. Community leaders in Forest, Mississippi brought the children to a community gym to provide care and comfort. 12 News reporter Alex Love was granted permission to talk to community leaders and the children. Children relied on neighbors and strangers to pick them up outside their homes after school. They drove the children to a community center where people tried to keep them calm. But many kids could not stop crying for mom and dad. Fighting back tears, Magdalena Gomez Gregorio, 11, expressed to us her devastation. Government, please show some heart, Gregorio cried. Let my parent be free. This came after ICE agents raided several food processing plants, which we read, and you understand the context. Let's move on. Quote, while we are a nation of immigrants, more than that, we are first and foremost a nation of laws, Southern District U.S. Attorney Mike Hurst argued. But those children and families who spoke to 12 News impacted by each raid stressed their parents and friends are good people. I need my dad and mommy. My dad didn't do anything. He's not a criminal. Well, listen, unfortunately, it is illegal to enter the country illegally. I mean, to enter the country without going through a port of entry and being properly documented is in fact a crime in this country. The parents who came here and worked illegally knew that they were doing it. You want to argue about the callousness of ICE? I would say this. I believe there absolutely is culpability on the fact that ICE raids were conducted without consideration to what's going to happen to these kids. The fact that these kids were left stranded outside of their school is deplorable, if you were to ask me. But it has to be said that parents understood this was highly probable and likely to happen, especially with Trump's rhetoric escalating. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not here to assign morality for the most part, but we have a serious problem. We can't just have kids standing outside with no idea what's happening and then and strangers or neighbors or people coming and just putting them in a gym. Okay, so whatever you want to propose, I honestly have no idea. My understanding is that many of these kids are actually American citizens. Let's read a little bit more. Quote, their mom's been here for 15 years and she has no record, Christina Peralta told us. A lot of people here have no record. They've been here 10 to 12 years. And if that's true, these kids who are younger than that probably were born in this country. Christina Peralta, the godmother of 2 children whose mom was arrested, told 12 News she feels helpless as she watches the boys wonder when they'll see their mother again. He said his mom is gone, that he's upset with Trump. He said he just wants his mom back. And they've been crying all day long since they've got home from school. But with the help of Clear Creek Boot Camp owner Jordan Barnes and other community leaders, the kids will have a place to sleep. Good Samaritans have also donated food. We're going to have bedding available for them, and we're going to have food available for them just to get them through the night. And if they need transportation to school tomorrow, we'll also take care of that. I want to stress, this is a serious problem, and it needs to be addressed. We cannot just be an open borders nation. Now, of course, you have the left saying no one's really calling for open borders, which is just plain not true. Ocasio-Cortez and a few others, I'm not entirely sure exactly who, I think it might be Rashida Tlaib, are members of the Democratic Socialists of America who recently passed a resolution calling for open borders, the free movement between nations. There are people calling for this. We are not at that point. Look, if you're on the left and you want to argue for that, get it passed, get people to vote for it. We're not there. So when people come to this country, without going through a port of entry, it's illegal. Crossing the border without documentation and working here is a violation of many U.S. laws. The parents need to be responsible. I will stress, any other crime committed would result in basically the same thing. I want to make sure I stress too, when I talk about the plight of these children, I am not in any way trying to say the parents aren't responsible. I'm saying these kids need to be taken care of. We cannot be a nation that leaves kids outside with no plan. That just doesn't make sense. It can't work. Okay, when a parent commits a crime, let's say there's an American citizen parent commits a crime, gets arrested, Department of Child Services or something comes and picks these kids up. There's a plan for this. It is not ideal. It is still a problem. But when the parent commits a crime, I understand that. The parents committed a crime. We're doing our best. Perhaps we can do better, and that's something we should argue for. But in this circumstance, many of these stories are that kids walked outside of school and they had no idea what was happening and their parents just weren't there. That to me is unacceptable. We need better planning for this. It's not the fault of these kids, okay? We need to make sure we have empathy, and we need to make sure there are lines we never cross. You want to arrest the parents because they broke the law? I understand that. But you've got to have a plan for their kids. You've got to plan ahead. Now I will stress too, I want to make one more point before moving on. It also doesn't make sense to simply just throw away our laws because kids are crying. In no way am I saying that. I'm just stressing this is a really difficult situation. It is, because the laws have to be enforced, and if you want them changed, vote for it. But let's move on from this, and we'll get to the broader point. BuzzFeed and many other outlets on the left are presenting a very sympathetic anti-ICE, border enforcement narrative. BuzzFeed reports families, quote, are scared to death after a massive ICE operation swept up hundreds of people. Right. But perhaps people should be afraid of breaking the law. Look, I'm not one to advocate for, retribution. In fact, to an extent, the idea of justice isn't necessarily appropriate in all circumstances. What we need is to end crime and rehabilitate people. Now, you may be arguing incentives. If the U.S. will not enforce border law, if these companies are not punished in some way, fined for hiring these people, it will incentivize the behavior and it will create more problems. We have laws. Most people in this country do not believe it should be legal to just come in the country whenever and wherever you want. Most people believe that should be illegal. They do not agree with the Democratic debates when they said decriminalize border crossings. Well, that presents us with a conundrum. If ICE, it's not ICE's job to take care of the kids and plan for them. Perhaps this should be a consideration of ICE, though. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is their job and they screwed this one up. I don't know. The point is, to what level of degree should we be concerned that people are scared because they broke the law? Well, if you broke the law and you're facing enforcement of that law, that's something you chose to do. If you're in the country in violation of U.S. law, that's something you chose to do. And these companies shouldn't be hiring these people. It's against the law. I will stress too, listen, I understand that laws can be broken to make a point. And sometimes breaking the laws will shine a light and allow Americans to determine whether or not the law should continue to exist. This is notably true for things like smoking pot or drinking beer. Beer was made illegal at one point. Everybody still did it. They broke the law. People got arrested. People died. And eventually they said that was a bad idea. People smoke pot. Well, now pot is being legalized across the board. This is a different story. We are not at the point now where this can or can't be justified. It just is illegal and is resulting in serious problems. And what we need to talk about is, should people be afraid after they break the law? I don't care what the law is. Yes, like if you want to be an activist and you want to sit in the street, be prepared to be arrested, even if you think you're doing it for a good cause. That's law enforcement. If you want to change those laws, you can highlight them, and we'll get to that point. But for now, we have a serious issue where the left is acting like simply because people are scared and crying, we should do away with the laws. I'm sorry, that's just not how it works. Okay? There are people who are hungry too, and they steal. Should we make theft legal? It's a complicated situation. But let's move on now, because there is more news beyond what happened here. The Daily News reports, exclusive, ICE agents tried to raid Brooklyn homeless shelter without warrants, according to sources. And this happened this was reported last night. So around the same time, these ICE raids are taking place. New York Daily News reports, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents tried to enter a Brooklyn homeless shelter Tuesday night, but were turned away after failing to produce a warrant, said Christine Quinn, the shelter's network director. The agents came to the East New York Wind shelter around 10 p.m. and showed guards a photo of someone they were seeking to detain. The ICE agent said they had a warrant. When asked to display it, they balked, and Wind guards denied them entry. Good. You need a warrant. I don't care what department you're from, you need a warrant. We shouldn't accept for any reason federal agents trying to enter premises under false pretenses or without a warrant. Show me a warrant should be something everybody's prepared to say. But I will stress, I highlight the story because it's interesting considering what happened in Mississippi, but for the most part, this seems to be a couple of guys. And these kind of actions we're seeing with, a couple ICE agents, it happens all the time. It's very different from the major ICE raids we saw in Mississippi. Now I want to talk about kind of the rhetoric we're seeing. Races is tweeting how after what happened in El Paso, ICE agents in Mississippi are separating families. The raids are these raids intentionally terrorize us all. We're seeing stories where people are alleging, like on Twitter, they're saying it's not about illegal immigration. It's just about immigrants, legal ones too. We have this story. Emails show Stephen Miller pressed hard to limit green cards. Well, if that's true, then it's true. But just because Stephen Miller wants to limit green cards doesn't mean they're trying to target all immigrants. That's an opinion. It's a complicated problem. But I'll give you my thoughts on the matter as kind of a wrap up here, and I'll go back to reiterate some points. The most important thing I think we should consider when talking about any of these policies, everything Trump says and what he's doing, is that I believe Trump is targeting a base. I don't think Trump is necessarily anti-immigrant or immigration. I think Trump is concerned about what most Americans want. Take a look at this Gallup poll. Let me zoom in just a little bit. It says, in your view, should immigration be kept at its present level, increased, or decreased? Increased has actually gone down to 27%. So you can see that the people who want more immigration has been steadily rising. But in 2019, it went down a little bit. The people who want immigration decreased has been steadily declining, but in 2019 has gone up. And the people who want it to stay where it is, 37%, has stayed around the same level with some spikes here and there. I highlight this to make one point. In my opinion, Donald Trump is looking at these trends and saying, what's the best bet? If I want votes, if I want to please the American people and serve their interests, what do? Well, there are more people who want less immigration, so Trump caters to them. As there are many people who want it kept at its present level, rather a neutral opinion, Trump doesn't seem to care what their opinion is for the most part, or he thinks maybe they're undecided. But between those who want more or less, Trump has sided with those who want less. I think that is the driving force, and that's why we see people like, this story from the second, Stephen Miller pressed hard to limit green cards. Yes, because there's a larger group of people who want less immigration than who want more. But let's get to the main point. I want to wrap everything up here. No matter your opinion, okay, this is the news. Major ICE raids in Mississippi. Expect more of this. But the important takeaway, these were planned months in advance, very likely to be true. That's what the AP is reporting. And Obama still deported more people than any other president. They target Trump, they blame Trump for this, but all of this happened under Obama. I want to stress all of the points I made about these kids should be taken seriously. These kids didn't break the law. Their parents did. Their parents are being arrested. We get that. What do we do about the kids? We have to make sure we are not becoming, you stare into the abyss too long, you become, let me actually do this right. Be careful when fighting monsters, lest ye become one, for when you stare into the abyss too long, the abyss stares back, or when you gaze into the abyss. Let's make sure everything is by the book, and as sympathetic and as empathetic as possible. And although these people are being arrested, we should never accept inhumane conditions for anyone, regardless of what crime they committed. If you are someone who stole a loaf of bread, or if you're someone who is accused of running someone over with your car, we should make sure your rights are being upheld. You are innocent until proven guilty. You have a right to the speedy trial, and the conditions in which we hold you are not decrepit and horrifying. And that is true for people crossing the border illegally. Now, unfortunately, as I've highlighted before, you've got Democrats who just don't want to vote for it. They finally did. More importantly, these children are innocent, so please, we need to figure out a humane way to help these kids. I'm sorry, your parents are being arrested. They broke the law. That's the way things are. Does it mean it's the right thing to do? No, just because laws exist doesn't mean they're just. But the solution isn't just throw away our laws and burn our code, our constitution. That makes no sense. I want empathy. I want these kids to be helped and taken care of, to be able to be with their parents, to visit their parents, to figure this out. But I don't know the solution. I know the answer isn't open borders, let everybody go. And I know the solution isn't to hell with the kids. Absolutely not. I will not stand for depravity and a callous law enforcement that ignores the plight of kids who had nothing to do with this. I don't know what the solution is, though. So, unfortunately, I will continue to be called the milquetoast fence sitter. I will be insulted and attacked by the left for not calling for more justice for these kids. I don't know what to tell you, man. This is a tough situation. I don't have all the answers. I know I feel for these kids, and this is a heart-wrecking circumstance that we cannot stand for. At the same time, we can't just burn our book of laws because kids are crying. When someone smokes drugs or sells them, they get taken away from their kids too. And those kids cry as well and beg for their parents back. We don't just release these people back into the streets. And yes, I can even go further and say, when someone is starving and they have kids so they steal food, they still get arrested. I don't know what the solution is, but this is not it. If you are from somewhere that is bad, you can't just come to the US and break the laws, because this is what happens. Comment below. Look, man, I'm not here to be the arbiter of morality. I'm just going to tell you what happens, and I'm going to say, let's figure it out. Stick around. Next segment will be coming up at 6 p.m. youtube.com/TimCastNews, and I will see you all then.